You are on the What I Never Saw channel. Enjoy watching.
I wasn't even supposed to be at the festival that day. It was one of those local community events the town hosted every summer. Cheap booths, kids running around with sticky hands, and that oddly comforting smell of kettle corn drifting through the air. Normally, I'd have made an excuse. I don't do well with crowds. Not anymore, anyway. But Maddie had talked me into it. "Come on," she said, nudging me with that sideways grin of hers. "It's not therapy, but sunshine and overpriced lemonade could be good for your soul." I rolled my eyes, but I agreed. Part of me didn't want to stay in the house again, staring at the same walls, letting the silence drag me under. So I threw on a clean shirt, grabbed my sunglasses, and let her drive. We parked a few blocks away, and by the time we reached the festival grounds, it was already buzzing. Kids darting between stalls, music playing from speakers mounted on light poles, families eating together on benches like they were living out a commercial for simple joy. I hadn't even gotten used to the noise when it happened. I spotted her. Emily, my ex-wife. She was standing near a lemonade stand, about 20 yards from us, talking to an older woman I didn't recognize. Her hair was longer now, loosely tied back, and she wore a navy blue sundress with sunglasses pushed up on her head. She looked calm, comfortable, but it was the kid in her arms that stopped me cold. Toddler. Couldn't have been more than a year and a half old. He had this floppy brown hair and a look on his face like he was taking in the world with quiet curiosity. Just like she used to. Time didn't just stop, it fractured. I stood there, half in motion, one foot ahead of the other, my brain scrambling to catch up with my eyes. It felt like I'd been *Ker punched in the stomach, only I was still standing, still breathing, somehow. Maddie came up next to me holding 2 cups of lemonade and paused when she noticed I wasn't moving. "Hey, you good?" I didn't answer right away. My eyes were still locked on Emily. She hadn't seen us yet, or maybe she had. Couldn't tell. Then it happened. Her gaze shifted, and she saw me. Her eyes flicked from mine to Maddie's, and I watched something ripple across her face. Shock, hesitation, panic maybe. She looked straight at Maddie like she'd been caught in a memory she never wanted back. Maddie froze too, recognition dawning slowly. Emily's face stiffened into something she probably thought resembled a casual smile. But I knew that expression, every twitch, every nuance. She was rattled. She started shifting her weight, adjusting the toddler on her hip. Her hand trembled slightly as she reached for the cup on the lemonade stand's counter. My mind was racing. That boy. I couldn't stop looking at him. He was too young. If I was doing the math right, Emily had walked out 2 years ago, claiming she needed clarity and space and whatever other vague words people use when they don't have the guts to say goodbye properly. We hadn't spoken since. And now she was here, in the middle of this bubblegum-colored festival, holding a child who would have had to be born about 6 or 7 months after she left. My stomach twisted. Maddie glanced at me, then followed my line of sight. "Is that?" "Yeah," I muttered. "It is." There was silence between us for a moment, the kind that says everything words can't. Then Maddie whispered, "She has a kid?" I didn't answer, because yeah, she had a kid. A real, living child that she never mentioned, never brought up in any of those final texts or half-hearted explanations. A child that, if timelines meant anything, had been conceived while we were still technically married. My pulse hammered in my ears. Emily turned away sharply, like she couldn't bear to hold eye contact any longer. She said something to the woman next to her, then adjusted the toddler again and started walking in the opposite direction. She didn't run, but it was close. Her body language screamed retreat. That's when I noticed something else. Something small, but it stuck with me. A smell. Cologne. Not mine. Not Maddie's. Definitely not Emily's. It was faint. Just a lingering trace in the air, but it was there. Warm, woodsy, unfamiliar. Not something you catch in the breeze at a summer festival. More like something you pick up when someone walks past you in a hurry. My gaze followed her as she disappeared into the crowd, her body taut like she was waiting for me to follow, to chase, to demand answers. But I didn't move. I just stood there, lemonade sweating in my hand, heart pounding like I was back in high school and had just caught someone cheating off my test. I felt Maddie watching me, her hand brushing my arm gently. "You okay?" "No," I said quietly. "Not even close. I should have seen this coming, right? I should have known something was off back then, how she'd started pulling away long before she left. But I hadn't connected it to anything like this. Not a child. Not him. The kicker? She hadn't even tried to explain. Not a word. Just locked eyes, panicked, and ran. I stood there for another minute, replaying everything in my head. The kid's age, the way she had clutched him tighter when she saw me, how fast she changed direction. It wasn't just shock on her face. It was guilt. Maddie spoke again. "Do you think, is there a chance?" "I don't know," I said, but I did. There was a chance. There was more than a chance. And I hadn't just seen my ex-wife again for the first time in 2 years. I'd seen my son. I didn't say much on the way home. Maddie drove while I stared out the window, not really seeing anything. Just colors, shapes, the occasional tree blurring past. She didn't press me, and I was grateful for that. The silence between us was heavy, but not uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that let you sort through your own mess without someone trying to tidy it up for you. But my mind wasn't quiet. Not even close. It was like someone had shaken loose a box of old puzzle pieces I'd shoved in the back of my brain. Pieces I'd ignored, misfiled, or convinced myself didn't belong to anything important. Now they were everywhere. I kept seeing Emily's face. The panic. The way she adjusted that kid like he might slip out of her arms if she didn't grip him tight enough. That wasn't the kind of panic you get from running into an ex. That was the panic of secrets, of recognition, of being exposed. She hadn't expected me there. And she definitely hadn't expected Maddie beside me. Maddie. God, that added a whole new layer to this mess. But right now, my head was somewhere else, somewhere a lot further back. There'd been signs. Of course there had. I just hadn't wanted to see them for what they were. Like the time Emily went on a wellness retreat upstate for 4 days. No cell service, she said. Digital detox, she called it. When she came back, she was oddly emotional, clingy even, but distant at the same time. I thought it was stress, maybe a breakthrough from some yoga breathing thing. I didn't question it. Or the weekend she said she was visiting her friend Tara in Boston. That Sunday night, she got home late, hours later than she'd said, and her clothes smelled faintly of something not hers. Not perfume, not shampoo, just off. She looked exhausted, like she hadn't slept, and when I asked how it went, she gave me this half smile and said, "It was good to get away," and that was it. Then there were the silences, the messages that never arrived. The times she'd glance at her phone, smile, then quickly lock the screen. I wasn't the jealous type. I trusted her. That was our thing, mutual independence. But now I felt like a damn fool. I remembered this one night, maybe a month before she left. I'd gone looking for wrapping paper in our hallway drawer and found a small gift box, wrapped in navy blue paper with a silver ribbon. There was no tag, just perfectly wrapped, untouched. When I asked her about it, she said it was for her coworker's baby shower, but she never brought it to work, and it never disappeared. I found it again weeks later, still hidden, still unopened. Eventually it just vanished. And then she did too. When she left, she didn't make a scene. There wasn't some blow-up or affair revealed in a burst of tears. She just said she needed clarity, that we'd grown distant, that she didn't feel like herself anymore. "It's not you," she said, standing in the doorway with her duffel bag, eyes glassy. "I just need time to figure out what I want." I didn't fight her. Maybe I should have. But I didn't know what I was fighting for back then. I thought she'd come back. That's how sure I was of her. But she didn't. And now, 2 years later, I realize I wasn't the only thing she left behind. That kid wasn't just a part of her future. He was a part of mine, too. By the time we got back to my place, I felt like I'd aged a decade. Maddie parked in the driveway and turned off the engine. She didn't say anything for a moment, just looked straight ahead. "She looked surprised," she said finally, breaking the silence. "Yeah," I murmured. "She saw me too." "I know. She hasn't spoken to me since she left you." Not a word. That landed heavier than it should have. Emily and Maddie had been close once. Before everything fell apart. Maddie was the one who helped me sort through Emily's things after she left. She sat with me on nights when I drank too much and listened to me try to untangle a story I never fully understood. The lines had blurred between us over time, but we never talked about what it meant. Maybe because neither of us wanted to ruin it. Or maybe because some things were easier left unnamed. Now there was a child. A little boy with her eyes and my timeline. I got out of the car without another word and went inside. Maddie followed but kept her distance, hanging in the doorway while I dropped my keys on the counter and rubbed the back of my neck like it might clear my thoughts. "You want to talk?" she asked gently. I don't even know what I'd say. "Okay." She paused. "I'll give you some space. Call me if you need anything." She left without a hug or a goodbye. Just a look. The kind that says, "I'm here, even if you don't know what to do with me right now." I appreciated that more than she probably knew. Once I was alone, I poured myself a drink. Just one. Sat down on the couch and stared at nothing. My mind started sifting again, grasping for answers and memories that once seemed normal, but now felt like coded messages I'd ignored. The change in her perfume. The way she used to flinch when her phone rang. How she'd started wearing a different kind of makeup. Lighter, softer, like she was trying to feel younger again. And the cologne. That detail stuck with me the most. It wasn't familiar. It wasn't subtle either. Expensive. Sharp. Masculine. There'd been someone else in her world. Maybe there still was. But more than anything, I kept going back to that boy. The kid in her arms. His wide, quiet eyes. He'd looked at me for a split second before she turned away, like he knew me in some strange, inexplicable way, and I hadn't been able to stop looking at him. I tried to convince myself I could be wrong, that maybe the math didn't work out exactly. Maybe she'd met someone right after she left. Maybe the kid wasn't mine. But the truth was already whispering to me from the edges of my thoughts, and I knew it wasn't going to stay quiet much longer. That night I didn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, watching headlights crawl across the walls every time a car passed outside. I imagined her life now, the place she must live, the routines, the bedtime rituals, the man whose cologne clung to her skin, and the child who might be mine, living a life I was never given a chance to be part of. I thought I'd made peace with the end of our marriage, but I'd only buried it under layers of time and routine. Now the truth was surfacing, and it wasn't just about what happened 2 years ago. It was about everything she'd never told me since. Came 3 days later, tucked between an electric bill and a coupon mailer for dog food I didn't buy. I knew her handwriting immediately. Tight, slanted, almost too neat. The kind of penmanship that always looked like it belonged to someone else. Someone more composed than the woman I used to fight with about takeout and laundry. The envelope had no return address. Just my name. I sat there staring at it for a long time. Part of me didn't want to open it. Another part already knew I would. I didn't read it right away. I set it on the table and paced the kitchen twice. I checked my phone for no reason. I looked out the window like something meaningful might be waiting in the yard. Then finally, I pulled out a chair, sat down, and opened the damn thing. There was no greeting. No dear Mark. No apology scribbled across the top. Just words. Straightforward. Like she knew there wasn't room for flowery crap anymore. "I need to tell you something you deserved to know a long time ago. I didn't have the courage to say it then. I don't even know if I have the right to say it now. But I'm going to try." That's how it started. The rest unraveled like a confession disguised as closure. I was pregnant when I left. I read that line over and over again, like repetition might change it. Pregnant. I knew it. I had known since the moment I saw that kid at the festival. But reading the words in her handwriting made it real in a way that felt deeper than I was ready for. She said she hadn't been sure who the father was. Not when she first found out. She used the word confused more than once. That she was scared. That everything in our marriage had felt broken already. And she didn't know how to tell me without it sounding like an accusation. She didn't name the man at first. She just said him. The one who'd been there, who listened, who understood what I was going through. Then she finally gave him a name. Jason. I knew exactly who she meant. Jason was an old coworker of hers. The guy she used to swear was harmless and just a friend. I remembered their little inside jokes, how they texted during dinner sometimes. She once called him the only person at the office who still believes in lunch breaks. I never thought much of it. Apparently, I should have. Jason didn't ask questions. He just stepped in. He's been raising Cody as his own. He loves him like he's his. I let him believe it was simple. I didn't want to destroy something that was working. Cody. So now the boy had a name. I sat back in my chair and stared at the ceiling. That name didn't feel made up. It felt like it had been around longer than I'd realized. Spoken in late-night whispers. Written on birthday cards I'd never seen. Scrawled on fridge magnets I'd never touched. I kept reading. She didn't try to hide the timeline. In fact, she clarified it in a way that made my stomach twist. What started with Jason began before I walked out. I know that changes everything. I know it ruins whatever good memory we might have had left. I won't ask for your forgiveness. I just thought you should know the truth, finally. Before she left. Not after. Not as some desperate attempt to move on. She'd been with him before the end. Which meant she'd been lying to both of us. Or maybe just to me. I don't remember how long I sat there after I finished reading. The room was silent, except for the faint hum of the fridge. I think I was waiting for something to happen, some kind of emotional explosion. But nothing came. No yelling, no rage, just that cold, hollow stillness. Like everything inside me had gone quiet. I reread the letter again, slower this time, looking for something, an apology that never came, or some clue that she regretted it more than she let on. But it wasn't that kind of letter. It wasn't begging for anything. It was surrender. After a while, I folded it back up and slid it into the drawer where we used to keep stamps and keys and leftover birthday candles. I didn't want it in the trash. Not yet. But I didn't want to keep looking at it either. Instead, I grabbed my phone and texted Maddie. You were right. She was hiding something. She responded a minute later. Want to talk? I didn't answer. I didn't know what to say. Everything felt too raw and too late at the same time. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about Jason. Not in a jealous way, more like curiosity twisted into resentment. What did he know? What had she told him? Did he suspect? Had he done the math and just decided not to care? Or had he actually believed the story she gave him? Maybe he had. Maybe he still did. And maybe, deep down, he didn't care whether Cody was his or not. Maybe loving someone was enough for him. I didn't know whether that made him naive or a better man than me. Either way, I couldn't stop wondering what it would have felt like to hold my son for the first time. To know I was a father. To be there when he first smiled or said a word or took a step. I'd lost all of that. Not to death, not to circumstance, but to a choice. Hers. She took those moments and gave them to someone else. And what haunted me most? He accepted them. Just like that. I wasn't even given the chance. The next day I took a long drive. No music. Just the sound of the road and the thoughts clawing at my insides. I ended up parked outside a coffee shop I used to go to with Emily. Back when things were simpler. Back before her smiles felt like riddles. I sat in the lot for maybe an hour watching strangers come and go. Families with strollers, couples with matching sunglasses. It was like watching a life I used to have play out with different actors. Eventually, I pulled out my phone again and typed out a message to Emily. I must have deleted and rewritten it 20 times before I settled on something simple. I got your letter. She responded the next day. I didn't expect you to reply, but thank you for reading it. That was all. No defense. No elaboration. Just that. For a moment I felt like messaging back. Asking a million questions. Why didn't you tell me? How could you hide this? What else haven't you said? But I didn't. Because none of it would change the fact that while I was grieving a marriage, she was carrying a child who might have been mine. A child she never told me about. A son. And now I wasn't sure what to do with that. I didn't make the decision right away. I carried it around for a week like a stone in my pocket, weighing everything. Every time I thought about picking up the phone, something held me back. Maybe fear, maybe denial. But eventually, the silence became too loud, and the questions became too heavy. So I made the call. The woman on the other end of the line sounded calm, professional. "You'll need to come in to complete the sample collection," she said. "We'll handle the rest. The child's guardian will be contacted separately to submit their portion, if they agree." That last part hung in the air. If they agree, that was the catch. I couldn't force anything. This wasn't court. This wasn't custody. This was just a truth I had to ask for, and hope someone else didn't stand in the way of it. 2 days later, Emily messaged me. "I heard from the testing clinic. No greeting, just the facts. I'll take Cody in this week." I didn't reply. There wasn't anything left to say. She already knew why I was doing this. She could guess what it meant. And if she had any lingering hope that maybe I wouldn't ask, that I'd just let Jason raise the boy and walk away quietly, she knew better now. It took 11 days for the results to come back. They arrived in an unmarked envelope. I didn't open it immediately. I stared at it for so long that I almost convinced myself not to. But eventually, I tore it open at the kitchen table. Alone, quiet, half expecting the page to disintegrate in my hands. But the words were plain. Probability of paternity, 997%. It was right there. No question. No more doubts. He was mine. Cody. This little boy I'd never held, never met, never even heard about until 2 weeks ago, was my son. My son. I didn't cry. I didn't throw anything. I didn't even speak. It wasn't rage or relief or even grief anymore. It was something else. Something deeper and quieter. Like the bottom had just dropped out of the world I'd been pretending still made sense. I sat there for a long time. I think I kept expecting to feel some kind of joy, some spark of belonging. A line that connected me to this child in a way that made up for what had been stolen. But it never came. What came was this cold, echoing emptiness. The realization that I hadn't just missed the birth. I'd missed everything. The first laugh. The first fever. The first time he reached out for someone. And it wasn't me. Those moments don't come back. They belong to someone else now. And that someone isn't me. At least not yet. Maddie came by later that evening. She texted to check in, and I'd said she could come over. I think she already knew the results without me saying a word. She stepped into the house like she didn't want to break anything, even the air. "Hey," she said softly. I nodded. "Hey, you okay?" I didn't answer. She didn't push. She sat next to me on the couch, just close enough that her knee touched mine. We didn't talk for a while. She just sat there with me, quiet and solid and present in a way I didn't realize I needed. After a long silence, I finally said, "He's mine." Her hand found mine. She didn't flinch. "I figured," she said. "I thought maybe, I don't know, that I'd feel something when I found out. But it's just emptiness." "That's grief," she said gently. "That's what it feels like when you lose something you didn't even know you had." I looked at her then, really looked at her. And suddenly, I realized that Maddie had been carrying something too. A different kind of pain. One that didn't belong to just Emily. One that had to do with loyalty and betrayal and the fact that she was standing in the middle of a war she didn't start. I squeezed her hand. She didn't let go. We didn't talk much that night. She stayed late. Fell asleep on the couch next to me while we watched some old black and white movie with the volume turned low. I didn't even know what it was about. I didn't care. I just remember thinking, for the first time in weeks, that maybe I didn't have to go through this completely alone. The next day, I reached out to Emily. I wasn't angry anymore. Not in the way I had been. The kind of anger I had now was quieter. Sharper. The kind that doesn't burn, it freezes. The kind that settles in your bones. I texted her. I got the results. She replied within minutes. I figured, "Do you want to meet?" That was it. Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "Let's talk." Just, "Do you want to meet?" I stared at the screen for a long time. Part of me wanted to say no. That she didn't get to dictate when I got to be a father. That she didn't get to ask like it was a favor. But I also knew it wasn't about her anymore. It was about him. So I wrote back, yes, but not at your place. Neutral ground. She agreed. Suggested the park near her old college. Said Cody liked the playground there. I didn't respond right away. But eventually I typed, I'll be there. I told Maddie about it that night. She didn't ask to come, didn't offer advice. She just looked at me and said, you're doing the right thing. Even if it's late, it's not about when. It's about showing up. That line stayed with me. Showing up. I hadn't had a chance to do that before. Now I could. Even if I had to start from nothing. Even if the road ahead was long. Even if it hurt. Because the truth was out now. And I wasn't going to disappear. Not anymore. I didn't expect Jason to answer the door. I figured Emily would meet me outside. Maybe try to keep everything low-key. But when I knocked, it was his face that greeted me. Calm, unreadable, with just enough fake politeness to make me feel like I didn't belong there. Mark, he said, as if we were neighbors discussing lawn care. She's getting Cody ready. He stepped aside without waiting for a reply. I walked in. It wasn't the house that got to me. It was how familiar it already felt. Shoes by the door. A tiny jacket on a hook with a dinosaur patch on the sleeve. A crayon drawing pinned to the fridge with magnets that looked like fruit slices. There were blocks scattered under the coffee table and a sippy cup sitting on the armrest of the couch. This was a home. A child's home. My son's home. And I wasn't in any of it. Jason closed the door behind me, then just stood there for a second like he was trying to decide if he should say more. I know this is weird, he said finally. Weird's a word for it, I replied. He nodded like he expected that. Then, without any ceremony, he walked over to the kitchen island, leaned on the edge and looked at me. I've always known, he said. That threw me. I blinked. What? I've always known he might not be mine. Emily told me before he was born. I didn't say anything. I just watched him, trying to understand what kind of man accepts that kind of uncertainty and still builds a life around it. He shrugged a little. I knew you two were still married when it happened. I'm not proud of that. But she told me early on there was a chance. I said I didn't care. Didn't care? I said, my voice a little sharper than I intended. You didn't care that he might have had a father out there? A real one? Jason didn't flinch. I cared. But she said you wouldn't want to be involved. That you'd moved on. She said things ended badly. I stared at him, jaw clenched. She said that. He nodded. I believed her. Maybe I shouldn't have. But at the time, I didn't want to complicate anything. I loved her. I loved the kid. Still do. My stomach turned. There was no anger in his voice. No gloating. Just this maddening level of calm. Like he thought this whole thing was just another grown-up discussion between two reasonable men. He wasn't my enemy. That was the worst part. He wasn't some cartoon villain I could blame. He was just the guy who stepped in when I didn't know I was being shut out. He played the role I didn't even know existed. Jason gestured toward the hallway. She'll be out in a minute. You want coffee or something? I laughed. I didn't mean to, but it came out short, bitter, absurd. No, I said. I don't want coffee. I want time. I want years I didn't get. I want to not be the guy who finds out he has a son from a goddamn envelope. His face tightened just slightly. Not offended, just understanding the weight of what I was saying. He nodded again, this time slower. I get it, he said. You don't. I snapped. You really don't. You've been there. You heard him cry at 2 a.m. You saw his first steps. You taught him how to hold a spoon. I missed it all because someone decided I wasn't part of the picture. Silence. I took a deep breath and looked away. My eyes landed on a framed photo on a side table. It was Emily and Cody at a beach. Both smiling, Cody with a sun hat too big for his head. The kind of photo you take when you think the world is finally right. I never even got to hold him, I said quietly. Jason didn't respond. Maybe he knew nothing he said would matter. Or maybe he understood that this wasn't a conversation I needed answers to. Just space to speak the truth out loud. I heard footsteps down the hallway. Emily's voice. Then the sound of tiny feet thudding on the hardwood floor. Cody, slow down, and there he was, running down the hall with this wide, wobbling gait, holding some little plush tiger in one hand, his mouth covered in what looked like the remains of yogurt or maybe toothpaste. He was smaller in person than I remembered from the festival, but his presence filled the room instantly. He stopped when he saw me, not scared, just curious. His head tilted to the side slightly, the way kids do when they're trying to decide if you're part of their world or just a weird extra in the background. I froze. Every muscle in my body told me to kneel down, to say something, to smile. But I couldn't move. Emily came into view behind him, gently placing her hand on his shoulder. Her expression was unreadable, part apology, part warning. "Cody," she said. "This is Mark. He's someone I used to know." The words hit like a slap. Used to know? That's what she landed on. But Cody just looked at me, blinking slowly. Then he smiled, showing a mouth full of tiny teeth and too much enthusiasm for someone who didn't know what I was supposed to be. "Hi," he chirped, waving his stuffed animal like it was a flag. I smiled, felt broken and real all at once. "Hey there, buddy." I didn't reach for him. I didn't try to push anything. I just let the moment be what it was. Emily knelt next to him. "Why don't you go grab your shoes?" she asked gently. Cody nodded and ran off again, leaving a trail of thuds behind him. When he was out of *T, Emily finally looked at me. "He doesn't know anything," she said. "Not yet." I figured. I wasn't ready to explain it to him. I didn't know if I'd ever have to. I nodded slowly, biting back a dozen things I could have said. What came out instead was quiet, steady. "You should have told me." "I know. I would have been there. I know." Jason stepped aside and headed toward the back of the house without another word. Maybe to give us space. Maybe because he didn't want to be part of what came next. I didn't care. I turned back to Emily. "So what now?" She looked tired. Older somehow. "That's up to you," she said. "I'm not going to stop you. If you want to be in his life, I won't stand in your way. But you have to understand. It's going to be complicated." "Yeah," I said. "I'm getting used to that." She gave a sad smile. "He's a good kid. Smart. Kind. You'd like him." "I already do." We stood in silence again. There wasn't anything poetic about it. Just quiet. Tense. Necessary. She finally broke the stillness. "We're going to the park later. You can come if you want." I nodded. Not because I was ready, but because I didn't want to keep missing what was mine.